On October 16th and 17th of 2003, the University of Minnesota's American Indian Studies Department and the Grotto Foundation convened the Indigenous Language Symposium in St. Paul, Minnesota. The purposes of the symposium are listed here. The symposium brought together Dakota and Ojibwe tribal elders, language teachers, fluent speakers, academicians, and leaders. Model programs and approaches of language revitalization were highlighted, and the native language grantee projects of the Grotto Foundation were showcased. This video offers only a small handful of the many treasured gifts shared by the presenters at this important event.
Ni kut no hat it nich ya ta tia so just I hope hat it was a time in our country that it was a policy of the most powerful country in this world that the boarding school was established in 1890 when little 6- and 7-year-olds were taken away from the mothers and the fathers and the grandpas and the grandmas, like children taken away from their mothers. And the lasting impact of that time remains with us because there is an incredible growth of research about the devastation of this time, not only to the breakup of the family, of the community, but this incredible beginning of psychological and emotional trauma of children growing up without the nurturing love and comfort of their mothers, their grandmothers, their fathers, and their grandfathers in their family. And the devastation and the psychological trauma continues as offspring are brought into this world, and those children absent the kind of nurturing and loving and embracing ways that their parents, through no fault of their own, continue to be victimized. I want to share with you the teachings, the prophecies in my part of the country. The elders talked about a time when children would no longer have ears, that children would hear and yet be deaf. Our elders talked about a time when our people could see but be blind. The elders talked about a time that in our life journey, we would have people alive with hearts, but no feeling. The elders talked about a time when we would be blessed with an incredible mind, but not be able to think. And the elders talked about a time when our mother tongue would be foreign to us, that we would speak but not communicate. The elders talked about that there will be a time when we become our own worst enemy. As the question is asked and answered by children yet to be born, whether during this time we rose to the challenge equal to those challenging times of those who've gone before. If this was the time that we collectively contributed to sustain the sacred spirit of language. Or is this the time when we fail to fulfill this sacred trust and responsibility, and that this is the time that we unconsciously sever the ties between those who've gone before and those to follow? When language is lost, language is this incredible spirit like a child that the Creator entrusted us to nurture, and can only sustain the vitality of its spirit if all of us are engaging in ways which we were blessed to keep that spirit of language alive. That when the Creator calls us home, and there no longer is language, who will connect us to all those who've gone before? That only language through ritual provides that connective spiritualness between those who've gone before, those of us alive today, and those who will follow in our footsteps. That when the Creator calls me home, will there still be language and ritual and ceremony that connects me to all those who've gone before? Because that's how critical and important language is, that connects all of us that are part of what the Creator gave to us, to give us value, to give us a sense of meaningness in our lives.
Every day, an Aboriginal language is lost, and we don't want to become part of that fatality. We want to energize our people, because what I'm seeing as a tribal chairman of a growing community with a lot of aches and pains is that some of our social issues could probably be remedied if we were strong language speakers or strong language learners. We've got all of the usual problems with alcohol, chemical dependency, out-of-home placement, a lot of things going on in our communities. We're losing our kids to the system. We're losing our kids to a place where they really shouldn't be. And so we have to decide if and how language can play a role in helping us keeping our families together.
Dakota was my first language. I grew up hearing the elders playing on the banks of the Mississippi and listening into the soft, gentle voices of the elders talking to us in Dakota, and hearing history and some of the sad parts of being a Dakota in Minnesota, and hearing that history. And once I got into public school, I never heard that anymore. We never heard our Indian history, we never heard anything. But I wanted to hear what happened at Fort Snelling. I wanted to hear about my chief, Ta'oyate Duta. I wanted to hear those names. Mazomani, Wamadi Tanka. Where are those names written in? When do our children hear those things? And when do we hear the names of our Kunshis, Tawapaha Tankawi? Those women that survived and helped us survive our history here. Those are the things I wanted my children to learn.
If we lose our language, we will be no longer Ojibwe people, but the descendants of Ojibwe people. Also, for Ojibwe people in our area, I do remember very vividly a number of experiences which pointed to the importance of language. One time I was apprenticing to an elder who passed away now a few years ago, Archie Mose, and one time he wanted to lecture people. And we were in the middle of ceremony, and he actually got up and he left the lodge we were having our ceremony in, came outside and spoke in English. And he said, you know, when I'm in that lodge, I cannot speak in English. But I have to come out here because some of you don't understand me when I'm talking Indian. But when I'm in there, I cannot speak English because the spirit doesn't understand me. And then he went on to lecture everyone about what he wanted to tell us. But there was a very important point where this old guy with his cane taking the extra energy to leave this lodge so he could lecture people in English about the importance of our language for spiritual communications. There's a reason why in traditional Ojibwe custom, when they do a funeral, they do it all in the Ojibwe language, even if the person being sent on never spoke Ojibwe. This is what our soul, what the soul of the Ojibwe people understands. The meanings behind important cultural concepts are contained in the language. You can take a word like the word we have for my namesake, Niyawen, and it contains the word Niyao, my body. When someone's a namesake, they're not just a godparent, which is how people would try to explain to a non-Indian. Well, a namesake is like a godparent to someone. But it's far more than that. When you give someone an Indian name, their body becomes a housing for part of your soul. Niyao is my body, Niyawen is my namesake. These cultural concepts come across only properly in our language. Tribal leaders, and I was grateful to see a few of them came and joined us today, need to understand the importance of language for sovereignty. What makes France a country is having a land that's France and a language that is French. What makes the Red Lake Nation a nation is having a land that is Red Lake and a language which is Ojibwe. It's so important for so many aspects of who we are as individuals and as a people. In the United States alone, we have an estimated 163 indigenous languages to go extinct within the next few decades.
As our community callers say, Bilakbaga, Ikya. People, look how we are. Look how beautiful we are. Today is such a special day. There's never going to be a day just the way we are today and the way we look. So I ask the Creator, and we ask the Creator to bless us and that we may learn a great deal from one another today. National studies from public and private sector emphasize the positive impact of language studies on educational achievement. It builds relationships between the students and elders. It builds the community.
Mai ka moku o ko uoni hanau. Hanau ia wau I ka moku. Ka moku o papo me wākea. Mai ka moku o Hawaii ahiki ka moku o Ni'ihau. O na ni ka ma kua mau. Ke ki me ka uhane no. A community, its people, will make or break the program. Oh, we want an immersion program. Yeah, we want an immersion program. So where's the people? Where's the hand? You hear the voices. Where's this thing? I'm not snapping my finger. I'm kind of rubbing it together. Hopefully green stuff will pop up. That stuff. It's not a person's dream, but a people's dream. The people can either make it or break it for themselves. And I always tell people throughout the world, you, as an elder who lives and breathes your native language, if you do not do anything about it, when you turn to dust, it too will turn to dust with you. It's a scary part. It's a sad part. I didn't realize that my father was a native speaker until after he died. Language is a gift that is given to us. We have to all breathe life into it. If you're a native speaker, you have a responsibility. If you're a learner like me, I have a responsibility. The students that I work with, we don't read and write at the university level. And as adults, you have a problem. Did you know that? Don't look at your neighbor, look at yourself. But you know that as an adult, you have this mental block. If there's one mental block, it's saying, if I can't see the word, I won't learn it. If I can't read the word, I won't learn it. If I can't write, if you can't be quiet, you won't learn. Did you know? Is that true? Clap your hands if you understand. There you go. See? for preschool babies, children, emerging students, kids. Kids have the capability to adapt. They don't have any experiences. Adults, you're like, I'm getting out of here because I'm feeling very uncomfortable. But for the emerging kids, they dive right in. And they grasp that language and pick it up very quickly. Look for a native speaker and attach yourself to them. Live, breathe their essence, breathe their soul, because they will give it to you. It's called the breath of life. We call it in Hawaiian, ha. Your ha. That's why when you always see me, I'm always doing. And this is Grandpa, and this is, yeah. You breathe the essence, and they breathe your essence, and that's how we greet one another. It's like the Maori people. They put their foreheads together, and they go. Hawaiian style, same thing. You will go by the nose, and you breathe. That's how you pass on your breath to the other person. And that's very appropriate for you to respect the other person like that, especially if they're an elder. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. When you go the first time, the 2-year-old, they're learning. Second year, they go again. Constantly, do not, bottom line, speak English. Period. With that, not only to the child do you not speak English, to one another. Teachers, administrators, everybody in the whole entire system speak the language. Be steadfast. Be very steadfast. That's how your language will grow. When you have a strategic plan in making your program, make sure you are ready for the next level and the next level and the next level. I am very, very fortunate and blessed to know, after 20 years of existence of the Ahapunana Leo program, we have reached from the little guys all the way to the big guys. Preschool all the way to the university level.
In the Master Apprentice program, we have a set of principles that the master, who is a language teacher or language speaker, and the learner use together. One of them is leave English behind. Make yourself understood through the context of what you're doing, through activities, through nonverbal information. Do things like cook a meal together with the speaker telling the apprentice, go get that pot over there and bring it over here and put it on the stove, and now there's the potatoes, go get a knife in the drawer over there and come and cut the potatoes. And so there's an enormous amount of language going on during this cooking process. Setting the table together, eating together. You know, all of these things are real activities in real life, and they're learning their language and teaching their language through those activities. And the activities allow someone to learn the language, but the activities also mean that you're using the language.
When we went out, we had to actually create an environment for Ojibwe in our community, because we don't hear it a lot. We just don't hear it around very often. And I had to go hound down these elders around town, and I would follow them around, and I'd say, hey, talk Ojibwe to me. And they couldn't get rid of me after a while. They'd see me coming, and they'd know that's what I wanted after a while. And my persistence paid off. Some of them started to help me out, and they said, well, how are you going to understand this? How are you going to know this? Because that's a big thing in our communities, is our first speakers look at us and they say, well, you're not going to understand a word we say. Why should we be that rude to you? Or maybe why should we waste our time speaking that way? It's just going to be easier that we share this English language. So going through a really solid training program in how to use these techniques for a useful language was really, really good.
The natural way of learning, and this is what we do. We just do it at home. We do it in a very natural setting. We just, whatever I've learned from my two master speakers, I just integrate it into daily life and use that as immersion. And obviously my little one understands everything I say, so it works.
What is working? And from what I've studied of these programs, what is working is immersion. Really immersing people in Ojibwe. Not just 20 minutes every other day, not just a fluent elder in every classroom, but to truly immerse and to run things in the native language right from the start. Regardless of fluency rates in the area, regardless of how much importation of language talent has to be done, immersion. Successful programs work with immersion and hands-on things, association. So if you want to teach them about wild ricing and the nomenclature for that, don't do it on a chalkboard. Take them out and go wild ricing and immerse them and show them. And people associate things with the actions. The other thing is supporting immersion efforts with all of the other work that needs to be done. Okay? That means developing an Ojibwe language literature, developing curriculum materials, discussing methodologies. There's so much work to be done. Everything from developing, Sesame Street in Ojibwe language and putting that out there for our kids, to doing voiceovers on mainstream media stuff like they do with most other living languages in the world, so people can watch, whatever it is, the movie Spirit or Shrek in Ojibwe. Because unless you're going to throw the TV out of your house, there's no way to overcome English unless you have this stuff available in your native languages.
Modern technology can amplify diminishing resources. Amplify diminishing resources. I really, really liked that. And that's really why I'm here today. In my own travels, I've felt that developing digital technology, as it's become easier and easier to use, and as it's come down further and further in price, has been very, very valuable in preserving our native languages, the concepts in our native cultures, and the lives of our people.
What we have tried to do within the context of our teacher education program at the college is train teachers in the methodology of teaching the language. So when we started the program a couple years ago as a collaboration between the University of Minnesota Duluth and the Fond du Lac Tribal College, we recognized the need for putting teachers in the classroom with the skills and the methods of teaching the language across the curriculum, so that the language was not seen as a pull-out 50-minute class in the curriculum or as a separate part of the overall curriculum. And so the students in the program made a decision to want to go after an Ojibwe language teaching minor in their bachelor's degree program, which put us in a position to negotiate with the Minnesota Board of Teaching a Ojibwe language teaching minor as a state-approved license in the state. And I sit here today in front of you happy to say that was accomplished. We graduated 16 students with their elementary degrees last May, and they all hold a Ojibwe language teaching minor that is certified and been licensed from the Minnesota Board of Teaching. And part of what drives me in the process, if you will, of moving towards language and training teachers that have skills to bring the language in the classroom is because I know the connection. I know what research tells us about kids and retention, about our kids and American Indian kids, and how language and culture are such a huge part of their ability to have a solid foundation underneath their feet. And when we start putting teachers in our classrooms that can bring that language into their arena and to show them that it can be used in all facets of their educational experience, you're empowering those children and you're allowing them to come to know who they are as Anishinaabe people, and that's a real that's our foundation.
One of my elders is here, Ambrose Little Ghost, and he asked a question. Tukadakia, omaka, doha omaka kiktopo wi khiyamni kaha, oyate ki Dakota wohadaka kihiptahe. He said, in the year 3000, when that time comes, will the Dakota people still be speaking Dakota? So then I knew, well, I just can't look at the rest of my life. I have to look way, way ahead. What am I going to do?
The language is connected with spirituality.
Out of respect for my elders, out of respect for the language, out of respect for my Dakota people, that's why I do this. Dakota iapi, ganaku Dakota wichohan tewachide chadechamo. I do this because I love and cherish my Dakota language, way of life, and my people. So,
when I was born, Ojibwe was my first language. And when I was 6 years old, that's when I was put into residential school. And I didn't know a word of English when I went to residential school. And when I got out of residential school, I was in grade 5, I believe, or grade 6. So I was in residential school for 6 years. And the experiences that I had in residential school, I didn't realize this until later, was to shape my life. So I went through high school, I went through college, I went through university, graduated, and when I was 25, I say ma, ngia bitya, ngia gwechma tasha amanido. Waganin dinawa, jish tigya banama nongom. I asked our Creator, when I was 25, I asked our Creator, what am I to do now? You know, I went through, this is what you put me through. I went through residential school, I went through college, I went through university. What am I to do with my life? And I asked the Creator that question. And one of the things that I wanted to do, apache, begishin gimiso endan, jigek kendaman, kidinawewininan. I had this strong desire to relearn my language. That's what I wanted to do. And the Creator, in His wisdom, made me a language teacher. And in my teaching career, I come to discover that there is a spirit that takes care of the language. And if you take care of the language will take care of you. If you work for the language will work for you.
One of the goals of the project is to piece back fragmented families through the teaching of the language, because the language holds our value system. For instance, the word wakaja, you say children. Well, that's how you translate it in English, children. But the real meaning of the word is they too are sacred. So that's in the Dakota language how we look at our wakaja, our little people, as being sacred little ones. So that's how the value system is passed down and contained within our language. So if we work with the children and the families, we're creating stronger Tioshpai systems. Tioshpai word, people say extended family, but it really means eats together. Those people that eat together, that come together and share meals. So if we have stronger family systems, we have stronger Tioshpais. If we have stronger Tioshpais, we have stronger nations. And that's how we look at, the acquisition and the importance of learning our language, is so that we can build stronger nation, the Ihantawa nation.
2001, 2002, well, in that spring, we went to the Hayward School, the public school that the Native kids had walked out of 20 years ago. We went back to that school board We said, you're failing, you're still failing the Native kids. We know the statistics, we know what's going on here. We think we have something that could be part of the answer. We want to teach a school all in Ojibwe. We want to start a school. And they gave us a charter. So that's how we started, and that was, we've been running that way for 2 years now. This is our 3rd year as a charter school. So that's kind of how we were able to start without really having necessarily everything in place before, you know, it would have maybe taken many, many, many years to get everything in place. And although maybe that's ideal, when we started, I think there were something like 15 speakers, and today there's less. Every year we see some, we lose some. So we didn't feel we had that luxury of time to figure everything out before we started. The 2 ingredients that we had to start was we had some very proficient speakers, and we had people, and sometimes these were the same people, and sometimes they were different people, who had a background in education or knew what was expected in a school.
We're devoted to teaching not just those Anishinaabe values and language, but also we're very much accountable to the education community, to our parents, by teaching modern curriculum. We do things like math, science, geography, social studies, reading. We do all those in Ojibwe, but we also ensure that our kids have some good, solid English skills. That's one big concern for our parents, is that our children be bilingual readers. And that's one thing that we have worked very, very hard to do. And one of our challenges is the lack of time. You have so many hours a day to cram so much in, but we have some really amazing students who are very dedicated to learning and really want the language. I knew I'd talk about challenges, and there's a lot. For instance, we have very little curriculum to use. I know Keller and myself probably work about 4 hours a day. He works in the morning, I work at night, just developing curriculum. Our Sundays are work, and we teach every subject. I love seeing that my children, my students, they know themselves and accept themselves as Ojibwe Anishinaabe people, that they're confident as that already at 5 and 6. They know their clans, they know how to talk about themselves and their families in Ojibwe. We have to make up a lot of words. That's one thing we find. We spend a lot of our time, you know, kids go out for recess, we have these emergency language conferences. We've developed terms like water surface tension, magnetism, geography, science. We've spent that effort, and Keller is our creative mind to the school. I love when my kids say to me that they want to be teachers of the language, that they want to be teachers at Wadu Kudaring when they get big, because there won't be any people we can just draw from the community at that time. There aren't any right now. So to have our kids say to me, I want to be a teacher like you, just is perhaps one of the greatest rewards you can possibly get from being an immersion teacher.
I talk to the Creator every day when I couldn't, to help me along, to help our Native people all over. I know a lot of people are losing their languages, which isn't their fault, really. That's what I think, you know, and I get to talk to a Creator to help us every day and try to learn our language. Even us over there in Wabashing, where I'm from, the younger generation is don't even speak, they don't even understand. The only ones that understand now is my age, and I feel that are older. I think we got about three elders left. And it's a shame that we're losing our language. But we can bring it back if we all work together.
I first got involved, I think, in tribal politics about 26 years ago as a district rep. And the problems that faced Fond du Lac at that time didn't really deal with language. They dealt with economics. And so what we did is we based all our efforts on trying to get the very simple basic needs met on our reservation. At that time, we had the luxury of having a number of fluent language speakers, and so it didn't seem to be an issue. Now, quarter of a century later, that's changed. Now the efforts have paid off in economic development. We're moving ahead in other areas, but we're seeing problems that we didn't really associate starting to arise. Breakdown in family units, breakdown in connections with who we are as a people, and other issues with our young people that seem to be deteriorating. We are losing our language speakers faster than we are learning. And I think that the answer is going to have to lie within us. That means that we're going to have to take the initiative, reach within ourselves and into our own pockets, and put together a language program.
The struggle that we all face is sustaining our work, and I think we heard that throughout the last couple of days. How do we sustain the work? How do we build upon our work? How do we start up? The issue at hand for all of us and on all of our minds is, in a harsh economic climate where states like Minnesota are struggling with massive budget cuts, which are affecting our communities, our schools, and all of our programs, and where the level of foundation giving is flat or down. But I think all of us agree that our language and our benefits to our communities is a challenge worth undertaking. One of the reasons this commitment was made on our part with our foundation was the promising effects on the academic achievement of our Native children. That was overall the reasoning behind embarking on this 15-year initiative. And I think we also recognize that it is not only a revitalization of our language, but it is also a preservation and revitalization of who we are as Indigenous peoples within our communities. And from that comes our health, from that comes our economic development, and that it must be a priority.
We knew that there were so few foundations funding in this area that if there was going to be some significant benefit, that we had to not only listen, but that we had to focus on what was really going to save a language. There were so many of them that were so threatened, so endangered. The philanthropic dollars in this country go to many different things, but to Native people, the fewest number of philanthropic dollars have gone over the years. It's less than 0.02%. That's not a good figure, and it's one that truly shames the foundation world. The obvious thing to me is that we need to be improving our relationships with other foundations and other donors on behalf of people who are doing this work.
I was encouraged by hearing Chairman Peacock yesterday speak to, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take ourselves within our own communities, our own tribal communities, and it will also take educating our public sectors and our private sectors. And in this case, we are speaking to funders in the foundation world today. And I think part of the responsibility that I have is to help educate, re-educate, and educate again others that might be partners in this work that we do.
I echo that and really feel that we as funders need to be activists just as much as you in the community are activists. We need to have collaborations, work together, put out papers, really try to impress on other people the beauty and the strength of the language immersion movement.
This video is dedicated to all of the men and women who are Ogichida, warriors on behalf of our sacred languages. May we join with them in helping to revitalize our sacred breath of life, dwelling in the endangered languages of our people. Many have said that if our languages are gone, we cease to exist as Dakota or Ojibwe people. Then we will only be the descendants of the people who called themselves the Dakota or the Ojibwe. We are hard at work so that this will not happen. Please join us in this vital effort.